Hello and welcome, my name is Daniel, and in this tutorial I want to show you how we set up a car inside Blender for my car control rig for Unreal Engine. So only want to have the car meshes here inside Blender, and you can import your car here with the import menu. And here you can choose your different formats, or you model the car inside Blender yourself. And of course, you can decide if you want to combine all the different meshes into one single mesh, or you can split everything apart into logical parts here. And I recommend this method. And later it's more comfortable in Unreal Engine to handle the materials. Of course, because you don't have to make so many face sets. Okay, we make sure the car sits directly in the center of our 3D space. That's very important. And then we are good to go. We can create our first bone. So let's add an armature here inside Blender. And as you can see, I can see the bone. So I want to toggle the viewport into X-ray mode, and now I can see the bone. Let's jump into the side view. So I simply click this X button here, and let's unfold this one here. So we have the first bone here, double click it and rename it into root. Then I want to jump into the edits mode, and as you can see, now I can select the head and the tail of my bone and create some coordinates for them. So we have the head coordinates and the tail coordinates, and I can also select the whole bone. And to create another bone, I want to select the whole bone. So the yellow outline indicates that the whole bone is selected. And with Command D, I can simply duplicate this bone here. So let's move this bone out a little bit, maybe in the center of the back tire here, and then I jump back into the objects mode, select my back tire, and as you can see, the axis of the back tire sits directly in the center of the tire. So you can simply copy the Y location here with Command C, then select the armature again, jump into edits mode, make sure I have the correct bone selected, and I simply paste in the Y direction here for the head and also for the tail. So the bone is perfectly aligned in the C direction. And then I simply jump back into objects mode, select the tire again and copy out the C coordinates. Select the armature again, jump back into edits mode and simply paste in the coordinates for the head, and I don't want to mess with the tail's coordinates. Okay, wonderful. And now the bone is perfectly aligned for the back axis here. So let's rename this bone into back. And now I want to jump into Cinema 4D, and as you can see, here I have the hierarchy and the correct naming. So make sure everything inside Blender is exactly named as in Cinema 4D, because the car control rig looks for the naming of the different bones and then creates the rig automatically. So if the bones do not have the correct naming, the procedural car rig won't work. So that's very important that you have the correct hierarchy and the correct naming. And simply duplicate the bone again, move it to the front tire, and let's select the backbone, copy the C coordinates and put them in the head of the front bone and the tail, although we don't want to put it in the tail. Then I simply jump into the objects mode, select the front tire, and I want to copy out the Y coordinates. Select the armature again, jump into edits mode and copy in the Y coordinates. Wonderful. And we rename this to front bone. Okay, that's it. And of course we have to create a chassis bone. So let's select the root and duplicate the root and put it maybe something like here. We want to make sure it sits directly underneath our body parts. Let's open up the transform items menu here, and we want to make sure 0 for the Y head and tail coordinates. Wonderful. Let's move it up a little bit. Maybe something like that, and rename it to chassis. Okay, and now we want to create the hierarchy because we have a flat hierarchy now. So if we take a look into Cinema 4D, the front is child of the root. So let's select first the front and then select the root with command. And in the armature menu, we have parent, and we make a parent keep offset. And as you can see, now the front is child of the root. Let's take a look into Cinema 4D, and the back is child of the front. So we select the back, then the front, and we simply jump into armature, parent, make, keep offset. Wonderful. And now the back is child of the front, and the chassis is child also of the front. So we select the chassis, then with command front, armature, parent, make, keep offset, and now the chassis is child of the front. Wonderful. So we have the base bones for our car rig, and now we want to create the bones for our tires. So simply duplicate my chassis bone here with command D, put it as maybe something like here, and rename this one to tire underscore FL. Select it, select the chassis bone, and with P, keep offset, the tire front left is child of the chassis bone. Okay, let's jump into the objects mode and select the tire. And if the axis of your tire sits directly in the center, you can simply copy out the transform location coordinates here. So let's select the first one here, the X coordinates, and then simply select the armature, jump into edits mode, and we simply copy this one in for tail and head. Then we jump back into objects mode, copy for Y. Select the armature again, jump into edits mode, and then we copy the Y in for head and tail, and then jump into objects, copy the Z coordinates of the tire, select the armature, jump into edit mode, and copy in the Z coordinate for the head only, because we don't want to mess with the tail. So maybe I set the tail to 1. That's nice. Okay, wonderful. Let's select the tire, and with command D, we duplicate it. So let's delete it again. So you can delete bones, select a bone, and then jump into the viewport. And with delete, you can choose delete bones. Okay, select the bone again and duplicate it with command D, and don't move your mouse, hit the enter button, and then the bone sits directly on the same coordinates. Okay, that's very confusing for me as Cinema 4D artist, that it works like that here in Blender. Okay, let's rename this one into rim FL and put it underneath the tire front left with P keep offset. Wonderful. Let's duplicate it again. Command D, don't move your mouse, hit enter, and it sits directly on the same coordinates, and we simply select it, then we select the rim, and with P we make a parent, keep offset, and then double click it, rename it into break underscore FL. So that's our tire hierarchy. So the tire sits underneath the chassis, and then the rim sits underneath the tire, and the brake sits underneath the rim. So exactly as we have it here in Cinema 4D. Tire front left, rim FL, brake FL. Tire FL, rim FL, brake FL. Okay, wonderful. And I will do that for the other tires, and then I will be back and we create some rates. Okay, now we have all the bones, the correct naming and the correct hierarchy. Let's rate the different meshes to the different bones. So as you can see now, if I toggle the X-ray mode, I can simply select my first mesh. Here in this case I select the chassis mesh, and for the chassis mesh I can simply create a new modifier, and the modifier is called Armature, and here I want to select my Armature object, and I can simply rename this into car. So it's my car armature object, maybe underscore car, so it sits on top of our collection. And let's jump back into the chassis again. So we have set up the modifier, the armature modifier, and then we can simply jump into data, and here we can create a new vertex group. So add a new vertex group and rename this vertex group exactly as your bone is named. So we want to bind the chassis part here to the chassis bone. So I create a new chassis vertex group here for this bone, and then in objects mode I select my chassis. Yes, that's correct. Then I jump into edits mode, and here I can see all my vertices. With Control A I can select all the vertices, and here in this menu you can simply select vertex group rates, and now you will see the whole thing is blue, and blue indicates it doesn't have any rating. So I simply select the vertex group here, have selected all the vertices, and I want to assign all the vertices to the vertex group, which is driven by the bone. So let's assign everything. Everything gets red, and we have 100% rating for all the vertices to our chassis bone. So let's jump back into objects mode and then select the armature again, and then we jump into pose mode. And in pose mode, we want to select the chassis bone here. So it's blue, the blue bone, chassis bone. And if we move the chassis bone up, you will see we have successfully rated the first mesh to the bone. And that's something, I guess, because this is my first Blender tutorial, you can do for something like that if you don't have a character or some organic things you have to rate. You can do that like that if you want to rate something to 100% to the bone. So let's do that again. Simply jump into objects mode. I have the tire, maybe tire front left selected, and I want to create a new vertex group here, and the tire gets rated to the rim. So not to the tire bone, it gets rated to the rim front left. So I simply create a vertex group rim underscore FL, create a modifier here, armature modifier, and then select car, jump back into rim FL, jump back into edits mode, select everything, and then assign everything to 100%, and jump back into objects mode, select the armature, jump back into pose mode, and now if I select my rim FL bone here and move it up, you will see the tire is rated to 100% to the rim FL bone. Wonderful. And so you can do that for the brake. So in objects mode, select the brake and create a new vertex group for it. So it's brake FL, brake underscore FL, select a modifier, armature modifier, and here we want to select a car. And then in edits mode, I want to jump back into data and assign everything to 100% to my brake FL vertex group. Wonderful. And so you can do that for the whole rig. So the tire gets rated to the rim and the caliper or brake gets rated to the brake. And all the other parts, the chassis parts, get rated to the chassis bone. And then if you have finished the whole rating for your different meshes, you can export it out. So I will do the rating, and then we want to export it out and import it into Unreal Engine. Okay, now the whole car is ready for export, but we want to clean up some things. So the first thing I want to clean up is my root bone here. So we simply select the armature again, then we jump into edits mode and select the root bone here and hit the delete key and then bones. So we want to delete the root bone and rename the underscore car armature into root. So later if we import it into Unreal Engine, we get an extra bone here created for the root armature. So we don't need the root bone, but you have to make sure the armature sits in the center of your 3D space. That's very important. That's one thing. The next thing is, if the bones and meshes are named the same, you will get some name clashes in Unreal Engine. We have to make sure that every object has its individual name. As you can see, the chassis bone is named chassis, and we have an mesh here which is also named chassis. So we simply rename this mesh into M underscore for mesh chassis. And we do that also for the tires and also for the brakes. So let's rename the brakes into M underscore and we do that also for the tires, because the tire mesh and the tire bone, they have also the same naming. And to avoid some name clashes in Unreal Engine, we want to make sure every object has its individual name. Okay, I think that's fine. Now we are ready for export. So we simply choose File, Export, and we want to export a FBX file. So in this case, we want to export mesh and armature. That's it. So you can only select the two things here. Transform also okay. Geometry also okay. And in armature, I want to change armature FBX node type into root, and I want to uncheck add leaf bones, because as you can see, Blender has this and joints here, and I don't want to have and joints created, and that's why I uncheck add leaf bones. And I think that's it. We don't have any animation, but you can also uncheck bake animation. And then you rename the thing and export it out as FBX. Okay, now we are inside Unreal Engine, and you simply import your FBX to Unreal Engine, and this FBX import options dialog will pop up, and you make sure to select a skeletal mesh and also convert scene and force front x-axis. Check them both and then import the whole thing into Unreal Engine. Okay, as you can see, everything was imported very well, and we have this skeletal mesh asset here. Simply select it, right click and create control rig, and then you simply double click the control rig, and maybe I dock it here, and inside this control rig you can simply delete the forward solves node, and you can open my Porsche procedural car control rig here. The procedural rig, double click it, and simply select all the nodes, copy them with Command C into your own control rig with Command V. Okay, wonderful. And as you can see, we compile everything and jump into the rig hierarchy. You see here are all the bones and all the controllers, and the whole thing looks very nice here inside Unreal Engine. Let's compile it, save it, and take a look into the content browser here. And we simply drag and drop the control rig into our scene, and as you can see, now we have a new sequence here, and you can see the controls, and you can start with animating your car. In this case, of course, we have to change the materials, but the whole thing is ready to go. You can simply work with your car rig. And that's how you import your own, or that's how you set up your own car model inside Blender and export it successfully into Unreal Engine and apply my procedural car rig to it. Of course, you can buy my procedural car control rig for Unreal Engine. I will put the link in the video description. Thanks for watching this tutorial. See you soon and goodbye.